Thank you so much. Oh, look at that. Voice of God. All right, good morning. It's lovely to see all of you. I'm going to welcome my guests up on the stage to join me, please. Allow me the privilege to introduce you to these speakers today. We have Sophie Shea, the Chief People Officer from Lazada, Eileen Chua, the Managing Director of SAP, based here in Singapore, Dr. Chen Hui Ong, Cluster Director, BizTech Group for IMDA, and Sonali Roychowdhury, the VP of HR for Procter & Gamble, Singapore and Regional Supply Chain. And I'm Charles. It's lovely to see you. Ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and for sharing in advance these wonderful insights. We're going to have this conversation about a really imperative topic, which is around leadership. Of course, it goes without saying that we're going to peel back some of the layers related to women in leadership around areas of empowerment and technology and the impact of technology on women in the workforce. And certainly a topic that I want to discuss towards the end of our conversation is around sponsorship and the imperative that men in the workforce have to step up and do their part to address disparities. But perhaps before we kind of get into the topics and start peeling back all that great content, if I could just ask each one of you down this line, and I promise you we won't do the down the line for every part of the conversation, but just to keep continuity, if I could ask you to each briefly introduce yourself and say hello, and then we can just go down the line like that.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Eileen. I run the Singapore operations for SAP Singapore. I've been in tech for more than 25 years, and it was an accidental journey. I was never trained in technology. In fact, I started my career in communications. I started off in an MNC, a huge MNC, worked at the bottom in the public affairs department, and I had the privilege and honor of giving to life, right, what was then not a very focused area within the marketing department, which is to create publicity awareness for our products. It was a large IT MNC then, and I had the opportunity through the sponsorship of great mentors at that time to pivot a comms career into the world of sales, and I've not looked back since.
Awesome. That's brilliant.
So I'm really pleased to be here. I was just sharing with Charles that this is probably my first on-site event with so many of you, so it's indeed a privilege.
And without one of these up on stage,
and speaking
really
without
cool.
the mask.
Lovely. Thank you. Sonali, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sonali, and I lead HR for the supply chain and Singapore headquarters for Procter & Gamble. We are a large consumer goods company. I hope many of you, if not all of you, are consumers of ours. But I've been in the HR field for 20 plus years, lived and worked across a number of different markets in Singapore, Vietnam, India, and worked across various regions. And consumer goods is very much, tech is very critical to especially what I do today, which is the supply chain, which is just accelerating rapidly and a lot of automation coming in. So we're seeing some very interesting dynamics there from a talent standpoint as well as tech. On a side note, Charles, at some point we'll have to talk about that jazz bar that they mentioned about. It sounds interesting.
Hi, I'm Chen Hui, and I'm from the cluster director at IMDA. So I run the business and technology team there, and what that means is that I work together with the research ecosystem as well as with industries to really promote the use of technology such as machine learning, 5G, as well as blockchains. So my career started essentially as an applied R&D engineer in defense. So I was in a not-for-profit organization that services primarily government and defense needs. So I was fully hands-on. I do the full gamut in cybersecurity, from consultancy, doing R&D, malware analysis, and so on. After a long time in DSO National Labs, I moved on to Singtel and Trustwave, eventually rising to become the APJ CTO. And then last year, I came and joined the public sector, so doing more strategic work looking at the broader ecosystem's needs, and to use a combination of both different kinds of strategies as well as to co-develop together with the industry. Yes, that's been my journey so far. I think I must say that over this entire journey, as I move from not-for-profit to for-profit organizations and then back to public sector, I've had the benefits of having many mentors, and at the same time also having a lot of opportunities that were given to me, right? That I may not have thought that I was ready for it, but that there were people who actually believed in me, and that has always been something that I've been very grateful for.
It's very important. Please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophie Shea. I'm a CPO for Lazada Group. I would say my major back to school was computer science. But after graduation, I actually choose to be the HR, which is more people-oriented, interactive job. I think it's more close to my heart. And I never stay away from the high-tech industry. So my past experience also including like the company Nortel Networks, Microsoft, and Alibaba. And it's also because of the globalization strategy and the initiatives from Alibaba that brought me here in Lazada. So I'm actually living and working in Lazada for the past 4 years. So it's quite a great journey for me to learn. Always keep mind open to learn.
That's awesome. It has been a rocket ship, so we're going to get into that as well. Ladies, thank you so much again, and thank you for the introductions. Give us some context for the conversation. I've written down some questions here, and we're going to keep this pretty airy and back and forth, I think. But I did want to start off with a specific question, which is around the Women in Tech initiative. Chen Hui, if I could direct this to you, just to give us a little bit more of a sense around how that initiative has gotten started and how IMDA specifically is working with that initiative and with the companies that they work with to flesh that out for us.
Yeah, so the Singapore Women in Tech initiative is actually run by a group of volunteers within IMDA. And our mission is to increase gender diversity in tech. So it started in 2019 when we had conversations with women tech leaders who mentioned that an initiative like that to make it visible, what are some of the role models in the tech industry, and to kind of drive the activities, be a convener of activities would be helpful. And in IMDA, so we took it up since our focus has always been the tech sector anyway. So we took it up, so we started the initiative in 2019. And we basically work with 3 groups of people, girls in schools, women who are already in the tech workforce, as well as the tech companies. So what we want to do is, first of all, to create awareness, but also to move from awareness to actual actions, right? And we do it through a variety of things. So with girls in schools, for example, just very recently we had a Girls in Tech event where we had 17 companies do outreach to 5 polytechnics. So we had a few hundred girls every day to attend the events and to hear from the companies what a life in tech in those companies actually looks like. So it was a good outreach opportunity, I think, for both sides. And I think this is important because in a lot of focus groups that we did with girls, a recurring theme comes up that in our school education, they are taught the traditional STEM topics, but tech is not an explicit subject.
Right.
And a lot of times they may not be aware of what are the job opportunities that are out there. They may not be aware of who are some of the leaders in this field. So we wanted to take this opportunity, right, and kind of showcase what a career in tech actually is, excite them, and grow their passion in it. We also do other areas around role modeling. So very recently, we also worked together with SCS to announce the 100 Women in Tech, right? And this is really to celebrate the achievements of some of these women who have done great work and cutting across business, academia, government, and some of them, many are also active in the social arena, right? So we want to make some of these women visible so that both girls as well as people who are considering joining tech can believe that, success is possible, right, regardless of gender. The third thing that we also want to do, and we do it primarily with companies, is the corporate pledge program. And in it, what we want, what we actually encourage the companies to do is to pledge 3 things that they want to do for the women in their workforce. And it can range from having recruiting activities that are targeted at girls, like what DBS does. It can also include things such as unconscious bias training for their workforce. So the companies have been very creative. We do this together with SG Tech. So you can go to the website and see the list of like 50+ companies who have all pledged 3 things that they have done. So so that's a gamut of things that we do. And really the aim is to make sure that people know that there are great jobs in tech. And you can have a very fulfilling career. And
this is a volunteer-focused exercise. I mean, that's a full-time gig. So I'm really impressed that you guys are able to do that in addition to the day job of what you're up to within the construct of IMDA. It's very impressive.
Yeah, we're driven by passion. Yeah.
Absolutely. That you mentioned just specifically there the pledges that the companies that get involved with that program are making. And that brings to mind this idea around programs within companies around diversity and equity and inclusion and these types of initiatives to drive this wedge across the disparity plane, which I think is so critical. Perhaps I could ask Sonali if you could just maybe start us off with a little bit of an expose or a little narrative around how your company is addressing the DEI initiatives. And maybe I could get the rest of the ladies here to also jump in as well.
Sure. I think listening to you, even though we're in such different fields, but I think the areas that to focus on are common, right? It is the need of the hour and the right thing to do for better communities, better business, and a better world. So for us, we operate like our DI strategy, if I would say, is 3-pronged. First of all, using the advocacy of our brands and our media voice. Okay, so we have a ton of brands, whether it's in skincare, SK2, Pantene, Ariel, etc., where we've, over the last several years, run several influential campaigns on advocacy around, bringing bias out, gender equality, and you will see those in Singapore and globally. So I think it's important for companies to have a voice and a stand on that. Secondly is around partnerships with communities. So we partner with many organizations, She Loves Tech being one of them, but beyond that, UN Women, and We Connect, where we partner with them to provide a lot of the training, capability development to women entrepreneurs, because the idea is how do you create value in terms of removing economic and educational barriers for girls and women. So that's an area where we're very active. And last but not the least is internal. Right, today we're at a place where we are, more than 50%, at every management level, but there is still way to go. Like I said, as a company, we are a consumer goods business, so tech, supply chain, the STEM areas are a big part of what we do. So there is a lot more to be done to, of course, accelerate women at leadership. But we do it by a lot of training, very focused development, identifying talent early in talent acquisition, making sure that when you go to hire and to campuses like NUS, etc., they see real role models, right? And that it's not an exception, but the rule. So making our talent attraction systems, even in simple things like the interview process, have women who can be role models and others can say, I can have a career like you. And then, of course, what you said, I think, Charles, around making sure that this is not just women-led or an HR activity. It's business. That's how business happens. So we've been very much using a program which we call Men Advocating Real Change, or MARC. It really unpacks a lot of the unconscious biases across the organization, all levels, and brings to life difficult conversations, but which are very important to have to make real progress. So those are kind of the 4 areas that I'd say we operate on in our DI strategy.
That's incredibly inclusive, and it's super high impact as well, across a massive population. Eileen, I know you and I were having this conversation before we came up on stage that we suddenly realized we had worked cross paths at SAP, and
Right.
SAP has had a journey around this topic. So could you share a little bit around?
So diversity and inclusion is not just about metrics, right? It's really core to the strategy of the company. It is our ambition to be the most inclusive software company on the planet, right? Because we feel that that's the right thing to do, and it will give us that competitive edge. I was just sharing with Charles that 10 to 15 years ago, because of our European heritage, a typical employee doing sales at SAP would probably be male, in their 40s, and a Caucasian. Now this has changed, right? Globally, we have pledged to have 30% of women in leadership positions by 2022. And we've done really well here in Southeast Asia. We've actually got more than 45% of women represented in leadership roles.
Excellent.
What we've done in the recruitment process is also to use technology. Us being a software company, we have leveraged technology to try to weed out unconscious biases, but in the way we look at recruiting and the way we look at candidates. The candidates of the future to be able, to undertake challenges that are around us today is going to be very different from the profile of candidates that we used to hire. So we are encouraging our managers to be open-minded about what talent looks like, right? And to really be a trend spotter, if you like, on what kind of talent is needed as we evolve, right? In our ambition to be the biggest business software company, supporting more than 400,000 companies around the world. So we have also noticed that our customers are getting more diverse, they're getting younger as well, hence the people that we bring onto our talent bench has got to change as well. So the lens to which we go about hiring has definitely changed. For women, we particularly look at using AI as well to look at pay parity. I think that's a big topic for us as well. And we are pleased to share that at SAP, we are embracing this and we are rolling out programs to ensure that there is pay parity across all genders. We do have a very active business women's network, and to Sonali's point, it's not just a community for women, but we bring forth the sponsorship of senior male leaders as well to support our female leaders in their development, in their career and their personal growth. We give them opportunities to be mentored by senior leaders. We give them the opportunity to speak, right? To have the courage to have their voice heard in the room, to have a seat at the table. And I think most importantly for leaders like myself to share my story, because I think the more we talk about it, it becomes the norm, right? And this whole concept of women in leadership can truly be demystified.
That's wonderful. And we're hearing from public sector, from two heritage, long-standing businesses. Sophie, just to kind of round off that little part of the conversation, because you're a newer business, could you share how Lazada is looking at the DEI initiatives, et cetera?
Yeah, no problem. Lazada is still quite a young company, right? Next year, we are going to approach our 10 years anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Since day one, Lazada's DNA is about diversity. You know what? We have more than 50 nationalities working in this region. And our female contribute to 40% of the total population. So if you look at the customers that this platform serves, it's about consumers. And in our consumer demographics, more than half of the demo is coming from female, right? So thanks for all the females' contribution to make a shopping festival. So to reflect to our business, to better serve the needs from the customers, we actually need this, coming from within, that we have the half-half from male and the female. So I think this is the nature of the business, right? And also, I think diversity strategy really needs to be driven from the top. So our ex-chairwoman, Lucy Pan, was actually a great role model to all the females, right? And then in all different level of the management, we have already seen a lot of female leaders has actually step up and be very successful. So we have a homegrown country COOs in Singapore, in Vietnam, and so in the business world, it's not only led by male. Now I do see the trend. A lot of female really step up to take the leadership role. Yeah, so not only HR, like
yeah, exactly,
like myself, right? Yeah, so in the commercial world, I think female really bring quite different voice on the table. That bring the healthy to the diversity of our business. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And to tap back onto that top 100 women in tech scenario, following on from what you just said, it's not just HR. There's a whole breadth of roles and impact that women are starting to make far more often now. It's not over yet. We're just getting started, but we're making progress. In the women in tech, I wanted to scan this stage and the audience and just ask to raise your hand if you're one of the top 100 women in tech this year for 2021. Are there any of the folks out here who are in there today? This one? I just want to give you guys a round of applause and say thank you for the contributions. In that role and in that honor, what are you seeing in terms of the change in mindsets around leadership as it relates to this topic of this inclusion and the diversity of women coming into leadership? What are some of the things that you're seeing change in the narrative?
So I think it's a misconception, right, that for a woman to thrive in the world of technology, you've got to be in deep tech and you've got to do technical skills. The reality is that there are just so many functions within a tech organization that require digitalization, transformative thinking, and that's where we can apply ourselves as well, right? We could be leaders in our own right without conforming to antiquated notions of what a technology professional should look like. Especially with the pandemic, well, I've been running, the business of the company for quite some years now. And it's not just about, the bottom line, right, that we're always driving towards. It's also ensuring that we tweak our leadership style. And I'm seeing it more so this year with the pandemic. We've got to be more people first and purpose-led. That's a key trend that's actually emerged. When we did a survey of our employees, they are looking to work for a company and to work long-term in a company where they feel a sense of belonging, attachment, and where the purpose of the business truly resonates with their own values and principles. So for me, I believe leading with empathy is going to be really important. Listening with intent, and really being that cheerleader, right? To be able to bring out the best in my charges, giving them the opportunity to grow, right? And I think most importantly, being able to relate what we do as a business application technology company, bringing that purpose and showing them what this means in their day-to-day jobs to the benefits that we hope to bring to our business communities, our customers, as well as to the planet. The other area is really about leaders creating what I call a culture of psychological safety. I think it's becoming even more important now that we focus on this. We're not seeing enough of our people. We've all pivoted to remote working conditions, and this has actually required a change in mindset on how you manage remote teams. And you've got to do that with a high degree of trust, and also to create a culture where everyone is encouraged to speak up, because we truly feel that the voice of our people matters. We have been communicating a whole lot more in the digital realm now that we've pivoted to work from home arrangements. I, for one, I'm doing my all hands probably it used to be 4 times a year. Now I've actually got to do it almost 8 times, double of that, just to ensure that I'm connecting with my people, I'm over-communicating, I'm keeping them engaged. And we also encourage our staff to talk about failures, right? It's not just about the success that we call attention to, but it's also about the lessons learned in some of the battle scars, and providing that safe environment where you can afford to fail, you learn from your mistakes so that you don't make that again. I think the last part about what I've seen in terms of changes in leadership is that we as leaders have also got to be progressive ourselves in ensuring that besides ensuring our people get the mentorship that they require to grow into their next role, we do not stop learning ourselves. So
Absolutely.
Being that role model to our employees, that we are constantly challenging ourselves to do more, to be better versions of ourselves.
Chen Hui, any comments to that?
Yeah, I definitely share many of the points that Eileen have mentioned. So I think if I look back at when I first started, and I was actually in the deep tech roles, right? It really looks very different from today. I think in the past, whether you're talking about people who are interviewing you, like what Sonali mentioned, to the kind of work environment, I was very much in a minority. At one point, I was like 1 out of like 29 men in the lab, right? But I think the situation has vastly changed today, and that has and that's to be encouraged. I think it's a very positive development. If we look at what is it that leaders are doing now, I think there's a lot more conversations on around some of these visions, right, about being inclusive. And inclusivity sometimes doesn't just include gender diversity. Yeah. It includes so many other things, people with disabilities, and different socioeconomic backgrounds and all that. So I think that part on having that kind of conversations, being willing to talk about some of these, is definitely very important. The second part, I think, that really has been brought up, especially during the COVID pandemic, right, is the importance of empathy in leadership. I think during the pandemic, back when I was in Trustwave as well, because we have like global teams, and what's happening globally, the kind of situations that individuals may be put in can be very different, right? And you're working remotely, there's so much of the norms had to change. And that having that empathy to understand where people may be coming from and how their circumstances may have changed, I think it's very important in order to ensure that trust and that safe environment continues regardless of some of these disruptions that are happening.
Yeah, that's a very human
Yes.
thing that's happened, and that empathy goes obviously beyond gender and beyond all those other aspects, and it's just about being real and authentic.
Yeah, so like I had a colleague in the US whose wife is actually a medical health professional.
Yes.
And at the peak of what is actually happening in the US, the wife was frequently very traumatized.
Of course.
And he's actually left at home with 2 kids most of the time because the wife is a frontline professional, right? Yeah. And it was a difficult time for him. So we actually had a lot of conversations and figuring out how we can actually negotiate and rework out what are some of the deliverables between the two of us. So I think some of these are important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You all have touched on the concept and the idea of the psychological safety. That psychological safety is based on trust, right? And that trust, in turn, is based upon being vulnerable and being authentically vulnerable about what's going on in the world and what's happening to people. It's very challenging and very difficult to maintain that level of empathy for many people, given the fact that we're all in this remote environment. This remote construct is making it incredibly challenging. So it's a great point that all of you have raised to remember that your experience is not exclusive. Lots of people are having challenges. The unconscious bias that a couple of you ladies just mentioned in your points is something I wanted to just peel back one more layer on very quickly, and just if you could share, maybe Sonali could start with you, some of the experiences that you've seen and some of the ways that perhaps you're working with your teams to try and eliminate or maybe expose and make them conscious biases so then we can address those biases?
Sure, and I see maybe there was a question from the audience.
Exactly,
around that,
I was using that as a catalyst for my
comment.
comment.
Well, the first, I think, step is to become aware before you even do them. And I think awareness is both being self-aware, team-aware, and then organizationally aware. Self-aware, many of us, there are some excellent tools which are available. I think many of them, by the Harvard Business School, you can find them online, called implicit bias. You can take it, it's about a 5-10 minute. It's incredibly amazing. Every time I do it, it's got a number of different things which look at, what is the bias that, helps you identify what exists in you. And every time I've done that test over the years, you get different results. And it said, well, okay, I thought I was aware of that. So I would ask you to go and do it.
I will. That's a great point.
It's very nice to do, and we use it a lot. So we've kind of publicized that within the company. Secondly, using that and then making more structured programs, like I mentioned, Mark, to bring that data to the fore and say, what does this say? So just a funny story, when I first did this with a sales leadership team in Procter & Gamble, and I'd done the test, and we shared both our results, saying, okay, who do you think answered what? And it was about a question around females in technology and science and STEM. And actually, the one which showed the bias was my result, not his, but everyone in the audience attributed that to the male. And the point was, that bias exists in all of us, and that's why it's unconscious. So it's important to do these and remind yourself that no matter, a lot of it is conditioning, right, over time. So that brought that out, and then using programs like Mark to facilitate a conversation.
Yes.
Because then you have a shared experience. So it's not just you responsible for the psychological safety, but there's 10 others who are speaking the same
100%.
language. And last but not least, then becoming vocal about it, right? Because it's not enough to just do it in the team. You have to, every chance you get, you have to be vocal. You have to be vigilant if you see behaviors which go against that. And you have to constantly keep on doing that. That's when it becomes norm and culture. It's a journey. I will say it's not easy at all, but I think just thinking of it in those ways, I think has made it a lot easier for us to make it a problem that can be tackled versus something that just overwhelms, I think, a lot of organizations and people.
That's a really interesting point. I'm going to ask you, Sophie, to chime in on your perspective as well. But I was just going to say that in doing some research for today, I was reading a study that said out of the Fortune 200 globally, 85% of the executive leadership of the Fortune 200 are men, which means they're 85% of the problem, but possibly and hopefully 85% of the solution, right? So to your point, that the biases that we have when they're realized, that self-awareness is a great first step, which is a really powerful point of view. Sophie, I just wanted to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, so Hello?
Yo.
Yeah, so I probably want to remind here, unconscious bias has both ways.
Yep.
Right? So, for example, in e-commerce platform, we have the health and beauty category, right? And usually people will think, hey, this category should be led by women. But in fact, our best category director is actually male, so leading this, more female-oriented category. Because they, from the other angle, they can tell, what are the better popular products, right, that really can please male, for example, right? So this is another angle. And another example is like electronics. Electronics sellers can be women. And in our platform, we have the Forward Women Seller Award. So we realized a lot of male-dominated consumer category is actually led by the women entrepreneurs. So this is quite interesting word, right?
It's awesome. I wanted to kind of take all of the points that you ladies have raised here, and with the remaining minutes, I wanted to talk about I think it's a really interesting topic, which is the shifting demographics of the workforce that we're all involved in today. I remember years ago we would wring our hands around this idea of this climax community of all these different generations finally working together in one workplace, and the expectations that the younger workforce had coming in to the market around, around inclusion, around access to information, around their ability to set their own schedules and work from wherever they wanted to work, et cetera, et cetera. And to a large extent, through the impact of the pandemic, a lot of those, entitled expectations are now table stakes for everybody, right? Which I think is a great thing. And I wanted to ask all of you, if you could, to share your perspectives on two key aspects. Number one, how do we ensure that we continue to inspire and role model for particularly young women who are coming into the workforce, what it takes to be a leader? Now, not everybody can or should be a leader, male or female, right? But if they have that ambition, if they have that desire to step up and lead, what are some of the key elements they need to consider? Maybe I'll start with you, Eileen.
If I could use myself as an
Please.
example, right? Because, I completely agree with what Ahmed said earlier. We have no shortage of female leaders at the very top, and they're very visible. We've got quite a few females who are entering the workforce, taking on very technical roles. But the challenge I find now that I'm in leadership is it's just so difficult to keep our females and then move them up to becoming a people manager. And there are a few factors. One, of course, would be the seasons of their lives. Some of them would prefer to take a less demanding role because of family commitments, right? Jacqueline talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
It's not everybody has an equal partner, right? So unfortunately, most of the women still bear the brunt of having to look after children and taking on household roles. I feel that process of getting females into leadership position has got to be an intentional one, and we've got to also respect, right, some of the choices that some of these females in our workforce would like to take at different seasons of their lives. But as females, I've noticed that they are usually a little bit more reserved in putting their hand up whenever a leadership role comes about. Whether it's the imposter syndrome or just feelings of insecure, it seems to be a lot more prevalent with women, right? So I think we've got to, as leaders, we've got to be very conscious about calling some of these out and sharing our own experiences, because we've gone through that ourselves before. It took almost 5 male leaders in my organization to give me the confidence, to give me the opportunities to step up into the next leadership role. And I think once you're able to overcome that first hurdle, that yes, I could do it, then the sky's the limit, right? Then they'll be a bit closer to breaking that glass ceiling and moving up into the C-suite. So for me, it's always about ensuring that we do not shy away from sharing our own story, because that's just a lot more real. When I was growing up in the tech organization, I had many female leaders, but they were a little bit inaccessible because they were so high up there.
Yeah.
We've got to probably empower and encourage the next level middle management, females in middle management, to be a bit more vocal and to be more generous about sharing their own stories, how they balance work and family commitments, and how they were able to overcome a lot of their insecurities to just take that first step.
Brilliant. Chen Hui?
I'm going to tap on my own experience as well, right? I think the reality is that there are different seasons in life, and there have been moments in my career when I have clearly said that my family takes priority. So, for example, when my first kid was born, that there were times when I basically said I needed to take a step back. And I think this is the part where being able to define the metrics of success that makes sense for yourself is really, I think, what carried me through those times. So not comparing myself to what others can be, and being comfortable with some of the choices that I've made at that moment, I think were very important. And they were essentially my guiding post, right? When I had to take that step back and I wanted to re-enter and try to move at a fast pace, that was really my guiding post to actually say, yeah, So I'm going to restart. It's not going to be easy, but that's what I'm going to do. The other thing that I wanted to say that, and I think it echoes what Eileen is saying, is I think this thing of daring to try is very important. And this is simply because of the nature of tech. It moves so fast, different roles are created at, like digital marketing, what was that? You don't learn that in school, and something that's new, so you should be, it's something that you have to learn yourself, so you have to be agile in learning. And the other part is when the role comes up, to actually raise up your hand and say, yeah, it's something interesting, I want to try it, and be willing to try. And I think the third part is really about that agility, right? I think the way tech has evolved from decades ago to what it is now, the combination of hard and soft skills are actually needed in order to work in tech, right? I think it's very different. So that willingness to learn and to pick out all these hard and soft skills in order to have that make sense for your role, for where you actually want to be next, I think it's also very important.
That's brilliant. I think, you know, in the interest of time, I'll just ask all four of you ladies if you would share with us, and this was not something that we discussed in our conversation, but I think it'll be spontaneous, but it won't be difficult. Just to share, based upon your experiences of getting to where you are today, if you could give my mama told me never guess a woman's age, okay? So I'm not gonna go down that path, but if you were to guess, or if you were to tell your 21-year-old self, right, one piece of advice, what would it be? It doesn't have to be a long one because we don't have a lot of time, but just a good, solid little piece of advice that you would tell your 21-year-old self as you started your journey towards getting to where you are today. Maybe, Sophie, we could start and then come down the line.
No problem. I would use one very popular phrase in Lazada. It is to go where it hurts.
Nice. That's great advice.
I would say, dare to try. Try everything.
I love it.
I'd say find your tribe and use them.
Right on.
Take courage, just do it.
I love it. Ladies, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much. On a very important conversation, incredible pearls of wisdom to share. And again, it's been an honor to sit up here and have this discourse with you. So thank you very much. Thank you.